If you've watched the first two videos in this series, you already know I'm not about to tell you that exercise cures ADHD or that getting kids off screens fixes everything. That's not where the evidence lands, and I'd rather undersell this than oversell it. But there is a real controlled evidence movement, and specifically time outdoors, that measurably changes ADHD symptoms. So let's go through what actually holds up and what's more wishful thinking than science. And I also want to put two real opposing clinical voices side by side in this one because I think that the tension between them is more honest than picking a side. Dr. Shirley Hershko has spent over 20 years focused specifically on ADHD in women and late diagnosis in adults. And I should be precise about her background because she holds a PhD in education, not a medical or clinical psychology degree, and she works as an ADHD diagnostician, therapist, and a parent counselor through her own practice alongside a lecturing position. That's a real relevant specialization, but it's a different kind of authority than a child psychiatrist such as Sami Tamimi, who is himself of the opinion that medications have many flaws in treating these symptoms. Her position, based on her own diagnostic and coaching work, is that a huge amount of what looks like a recent surge in adult ADHD is really just historical underdiagnosis finally being corrected. People, especially women, who were simply never looked at properly as kids because the diagnostic picture at the time was built around hyperactive young boys. Sami Tamimi, the child psychiatrist that I'm mentioning, is a medical doctor and a consultant psychiatrist who would push back directly on the specific mechanism that makes that correction narrative work. The reason more adult women are being diagnosed now in his account is a concept called masking, the idea that someone can have every underlying trait of ADHD while appearing completely fine because they're working hard to hide it. He's skeptical of the concept specifically because it isn't falsifiable. Visible struggle confirms the diagnosis, invisible struggle also confirms the diagnosis, just hidden. Two people looking at exactly the same trend, more adult women getting diagnosed and reaching opposite conclusions about whether that's correction of a real historical blind spot or an unfalsifiable concept doing the work of making the category impossible to outgrow. Now, I'm not going to tell you which of them is right, and I want to say this from my own experience, not just as a balancing act. I have sat across from adults who spent years, sometimes decades, quietly convinced that everyone else had simply learned to function in ways that they could not, before finally understanding, often only after an adult diagnosis, that they'd been carrying something real the entire time. That relief, that sense of finally being believed is not nothing, and I'm not willing to wave it away just for the sake of a tidy argument. So if you're watching this and a late diagnosis gave you that kind of recognition, nothing in this video is aimed at you, and nothing here is telling me that your experience wasn't real. What I'm skeptical of is masking a tree concept, not any individual person's account of their own life. Those are two different things, and I think it's important to keep them separate. Tamimi's specific objection to the concept is a fair one on its own logical terms, independent of any individual person's story. Both things can be true at once. The concept can have a real logical weakness, and the suffering it's being used to describe can in a great many people be completely real. Onto the lifestyle side, starting with plain old physical exercise. And I want to say up front why I'm spending so much time on this and the sections that follow. Not because medication has no place, but because my own practice has moved toward using it minimally, and that only works if there's something real to put in its place in the first place. There have been several recent meta-analyses pooling together dozens of randomized controlled trials, well over 1,000 kids in total, and they consistently find moderate improvements in attention, core ADHD symptoms, executive function, even sleep quality from structured exercise interventions. That's a real replicated finding, not a single study you could wave away. One nuance that I think matters clinically: cognitively engaging exercise, things like sports that require decision-making, such as tennis, coordination, reacting to other people, outperform repetitive aerobic exercise like running on a treadmill. So it's not just about raising your heart rate, the actual type of sport or movement matters. And I do want to be clear about the ceiling here too. Stimulant medications effect size is still roughly 2 to 3 times larger than the best evidence exercise interventions on the specific measure of symptom reduction. This is a genuine evidence-based adjunct, and in my own practice now, often the first thing I want tried and given real time before medication rather than only alongside it for milder presentations. It's not a replacement for someone in real crisis or distress. I'd rather tell you that than clearly let anyone walk away thinking that a football league solves everything or that it solves nothing. Something more specific and more actionable for parents and teachers: classroom movement breaks. 10 to 15 minutes, cognitively engaging, built into the school day. These measurably improve on-task behavior and attention. And this isn't just in kids with ADHD, this is across general school populations. The effect sizes are small to moderate. Now, here's the detail that actually makes this useful rather than a vague let kids run around platitude. Breaks shorter than about 5 minutes don't show a measurable effect at all. Duration matters and engagement matters. Now, the next one is genuinely my favorite piece of evidence in the whole series that I've done here, and I don't think it gets nearly enough attention. There's a research program out of the University of Illinois looking specifically at green natural outdoor settings, and they found that kids with ADHD who spent time in genuinely green settings showed significantly better symptom control than after equivalent time in built or indoor environments, and this held up across age, sex, family income, region, and severity of diagnosis. The single best data point from this whole body of work, a 20-minute guided walk through a park, improved objectively measured concentration in kids with ADHD significantly more than an equivalent walk through a built-up area. Same day, no medication involved, 20 minutes. I want to be careful with the caveat here because overselling this would actually undercut it. This is a specific single outcome, relatively modest size finding. It is not nature equals medication, but it is a genuinely useful, essentially free, zero side effect intervention that measurably helps a specific and important kind of attention task. This is a good moment to pause and ask you something. If you've ever noticed that you or your child concentrates noticeably better outdoors, in a park, somewhere green versus stuck inside, I really want to hear about it. Please tell me in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this series, please make sure you're subscribed because there's more of this to come. Longitudinal studies consistently find that more screen time is associated with worse ADHD symptoms over time, including within the same child year over year. But there's a more sophisticated study from 2024, a Mendelian randomization study using genetic variants to test actual causation rather than just correlation. And it found that phone use and television time genetically predicted higher ADHD risk. Sounds like a smoking gun, except that there's published commentary on that exact same study arguing the more plausible direction is actually in the reverse, that having ADHD predisposes a child to seek out more screen time and not the other way around. So here's the honest answer. Screens cause ADHD is not something that the current evidence proves in either direction. The association is real, but the causal arrow is still being genuinely argued about. And I want to end this video somewhere different from where the whole series has been sitting so far, because everything up to now has treated ADHD as a problem to be managed. And I don't think that that's the complete picture at all. There's real research behind the idea that ADHD traits can be a genuine advantage in the right setting. Researcher Johan Wiklund and colleagues have published work specifically on ADHD and entrepreneurship, finding that traits like impulsivity, novelty seeking, and a bias toward action over deliberation line up remarkably well with what it actually takes to spot an opportunity and act on it fast. Separately, researchers Holly White and Priti Shah found that adults with ADHD outperform others on certain measures of creative divergent thinking, probably because of the same difficulty filtering out irrelevant information that makes sitting through a lecture hard also lets more unusual, unexpected ideas into conscious awareness in the first place. There's a popular idea that goes further, the hunter versus farmer. The hypothesis is that these traits were specifically adapted for hunting and foraging societies. And I want to be clear that specific version of is a popular hypothesis and it's not something that evolutionary biology has confirmed. But the broader idea underneath it that a trait can be a genuine mismatch with a modern structured environment without being a defect in itself is a real mainstream idea in evolutionary psychiatry. And it's the same idea that's been running underneath this entire video series that I'm making right now. And I can talk from my own clinical experience that I've seen many patients over the years who have traits that could be described as ADHD and who accept this wholeheartedly because they actually find that it helps them to perform better in their careers. The actual point, none of this cancels out real impairment, real difficulty, real suffering for a lot of people with ADHD. I don't want it to, and it's actually a superpower narrative talking anyone out of real help if they need it. But fit matters enormously, and part of good treatment, I think, is helping someone find that fit, and not just suppressing the trait everywhere it shows up, and not reaching for medication as the default first move before anyone's tried that. Or family. I think it's genuinely cultural. A society that measures a person's worth almost entirely through individual, checklist-style performance is going to pathologize traits that a more relational, collective-minded society might simply absorb, or root around, or even find useful. I think it's one of the more important undercurrents running through this whole series, and I want to go deeper on it properly in the last video. Pulling together what we've covered so far. ADHD, very like mechanisms, real neurodevelopmental cases sitting alongside culturally shaped distractibility, with genuinely credentialed clinicians disagreeing about how to read the same trends. And what actually helps isn't one thing either. Movement, green time, and correcting a genuine physical deficiency can meaningfully shift where someone lands on that spectrum, often before medication needs to enter the picture at all. If you only take one practical thing from this video, take the 20-minute park walk. Make it 40 minutes, make it an hour. It's free, it's got real evidence behind it, and it's something you could actually go and do today. There's one more video in this series. I want to follow the money. How much of the diagnostic expansion we've been discussing is genuinely being shaped by pharmaceutical funding, and come back to nutrition properly, including walking back part of my own assumption about a popular claim involving Japan and fish consumption. And before you go, put 2 videos up here you might want to watch next. See you in the next one. Thanks for your curiosity. Ciao for now.